Now, the work that Occupy Venice and their partners are doing is multifaceted. First off, that was a berry. First off, they represent a movement, a coming together of people in the name of justice, voiced via a local issue. In this case, homelessness as an effect of income inequality and systemic injustice. With this pointed goal, they work to mitigate the effects of homelessness while also working to unfuck the system that creates homelessness. And that's key. Feeding the homeless is nothing short of honorable, but if you don't also hold the system who created them accountable, you're squirting a vaccine on a tumor that will only continue to grow. There is no discrete issue. No issue that stands alone that isn't tied to the homicidal drones on their thrones napalming our rights. We have to draw these lines. The ties that bind follow them to conclusion, the collusion of government and the 1%. This is where our fight, or at least part of our fight, has to take us. Homelessness isn't normal. Poverty is not normal. It's planned. Like a fucking garden party or an OCD person's wardrobe. That shit is laid out with specific rules on who plays and who gets played. Now, as Bill Moyer said in last week's episode, the war against the imagination is the only war that matters because all other wars are subsumed by it. We believe poverty is normal because it's always been there. That the best we can do is throw some money at a homeless person or put a yellow ribbon on our car to support the troops. We believe that we can't radically change the way the world looks because we've been told that we can't. Now imagine that you could. Imagine that these rules you're being played by can not only be changed, but should be changed. An organization called The Rules seeks to instill in you, and indeed the world, with this power of imagination. I'll let founder Martin Kirk elaborate further.
So The Rules is really just a collective of people around the world, various people from artists to writers to coders to people who are interested in looking at the root causes of global inequality and poverty. So one of the reasons we call ourselves The Rules is to try and differentiate ourselves from that whole concept of global poverty and inequality that is very dominant now, which is around development and aid, foreign aid and charities and all that sort of thing, which we think is much more of the problem than any sort of solution to it. So we set ourselves up in 2012, end of 2012, we've been going since then, and our whole kind of MO really is to try and shift that discourse. It's about the rules of the game. It's about how the system is rigged. It's a very kind of Occupy message in that sense. And so as you say, we do our work in two ways. One is we hook up with social movements around the world. We make content on our own. So we've produced a few videos now. We produced one that came out just at the beginning of this year called "Capitalism is Just a Story," which tries that just tries to get to the idea that this isn't an insoluble problem. This is something we can do something about. Ultimately, it's about belief systems and what we believe.
And how are you able to, you said that it may sound a little grand, but how do you focus on such a global scale, particularly when you're working with communities that are very grassroots and movements that are very grassroots? How do you connect this onto that global scale?
Yeah, no, that's a constant challenge. One thing that we do try to do is bring some particular scientific methodology to bear, particularly around cognitive linguistics and systems thinking. So there is such a thing as a global conversation that sets the global norm, that is within which all political decisions are made, all popular opinion is formed. And actually Occupy is a great example of an effort that hacked that global conversation. Occupy got the 199% meme into the global conversation in an incredibly powerful way, and it's changed the conversation profoundly, fundamentally. And so we do things like we scan LexisNexis database of all media that's been written about, and then we analyze it. We break it down, we code it, we use data analysts, we use cognitive linguists then to kind of analyze the framing of it. So we try to get as clear and solid an understanding of that discourse as possible in order to then be able to intervene in an effective way. And right now we actually wrote a pamphlet called The One Party Planet at the end of last year that really picked this apart a bit, where we just said there is essentially one political party in control, and it's kind of held together by an ideology, a very extreme neoliberal ideology. And it's the same in Kenya as it is in Guatemala, as it is in Wall Street, as it is in the UK. We have to get into understanding that this is a global operating system that's programmed with neoliberal programming, And one of the ways it's held together is through communications and discourse and dialogue. So that's our particular way to get into it.
So would it be correct in saying that the rules, your sort of transformational agenda for change, is to really combat the mind and sort of shift paradigms as opposed to, pushing people to act a certain way? You're really trying to shift their minds so that they then act a certain way.
Exactly. That's well put. What we believe and the largely kind of subconscious associations and assumptions we make, and that rich soil of belief is where all action grows from. So if you can get into that rich soil of belief and you can start to work at that level, because we know for damn sure that's the level that most of the neoliberals work at and have done for a long time. So we're a long way behind the game here. We're not trying to do anything that is not being done to us day in, day out. And I'll give you one example of an idea that we think is really, really important. So one very small idea is that poverty is created. Poverty isn't a natural occurrence. It's not just this terrible thing that we're all getting behind to fight together. No, poverty is an outcome, a logical outcome of the system that we have. Right. And what I mean is poverty, kind of the systemic poverty, the structural poverty that is seeing currently about 4.3 billion people living on less than $5 a day. Those are not people that are left out of the system in some way. Those people are very much part of the system, and their circumstance is as much a product of the system as the Walmart heirs, for example. And so once you can get people and you can start to get this idea that poverty is created into the discourse, suddenly you have an incentive built into the logic that gets people asking why. And so it's a logic that searches out causes and doesn't rely or rest on palliative responses like charity or aid. It says we must find, if we want to solve this, we've got to find out what created it. So that, just the concept of poverty is created.
Talk a little bit about these NGOs and charities, because it's an interesting problem. A lot of people feel that, I can just wait till the end of the year, then I give, $100 to the World Wildlife Fund or, some child's fund, and then I've done my bit. Talk a little bit about how that sort of paradigm is actually contributing to poverty and inequality.
Yeah, and this is a really hard one. My background is in aid agencies. I worked for Oxfam, I worked for Save the Children. I was a lobbyist for Save the Children. I went around the world to the UNs and governments of the world and did lobbying for them. I come from that world. I know that it is filled with good people. It is filled with good people trying to do good. But, and this is one of the reasons I left and set out the rules, was charity as a concept is a very small thing. Charity is what, and you can tell this by how it, just the look of charity around the world. Charity is secondhand clothes. It's your spare change. It's, as you say, it's $100 at the end of the year when I've done everything else I need. It's a palliative response to a problem. Now, it is in its box, nothing wrong with it. But the minute you confuse that with anything like a solution to the problem, is the minute you've got to cry foul. And unfortunately, in my experience, and just looking around the world, that distinction between charity as a palliative response that can come from a good place, but is merely a sticking plaster, and there's the concept of fixing the system is a confusion that lots of the big NGOs refuse to acknowledge. If you say to that person, the $100 a year for WWF, there's your job done, that's all you need to think about, there's your, tick the box, you've done your thing, then you're depoliticizing the issue. You're telling them they don't have to worry about it when they go to the ballot box. They don't have to worry about it in the, when they assess the actions of their government. All they have to do is give $100 a month. So it's about keeping charity in its proper place, and not allowing it to even come close to the conversations we need to have about fixing the kind of the deep rot in the system.
And of course, if you did fix this deep or attempt to fix the deep rot in the system, you wouldn't have the need for so many charity organizations because the governments would be doing their bit to ensure that inequality wasn't so skewed that people were starving. And talk a little bit about how you see art promoting this paradigm shift. And in particular, I mean, how the rules uses art and how you see art in general pushing for socio-political change.
Oh, art is essential. It's essential. It has been through the ages. Art is the front edge of social ideas. It's how we communicate to each other when literal language won't work. And it's how we communicate in a way that blends the emotion, the huge emotional content of these issues with the rational mind in a way that works. That can be understood. So revolutions don't happen without artists. We also we did something called an artivism lab in Nairobi about a year ago, which was fantastic. We got 30 artists mainly from the slums, but also from the rest of Nairobi and around, to come together, and we put them together with some producers, and we got them the guys called Beat Making Lab, and we got them just kind of really skilling them up to be able to make music and to be able to kind of work with music software to kind of write their own tracks. We put out a video that they made on that, which was amazing. When we did a campaign at the World Bank last year, we got lots of graffiti artists again in Nairobi to do what they wanted to do with it. And it's such a free and engaging form of expression that captures kind of the soul of the struggle rather than just people like me. I'm very cerebral. I'm very rational, cerebral. I can't communicate the way an artist can. So that's what we tried to do.
Talking to people about getting into activism, they feel like it's so obtuse. Where do I start? Everything's so abstract. There's so much evil going on in the world. What would you say to someone who wants to get started and wants to help out?
There are groups you can join that are either skills-based, so we've got like a journalists group, we've got a bloggers group, we've got a social media enthusiasts, we call it group. So you can join one of the groups, and it's only just getting going in this community. We're at the beginning, so we really need help getting in there. The ideal is that whatever you bring, you will find a place for it. We don't want to grow the biggest list in the world. We don't want to rival the Avazes with their 30 million people email list. That's not our contribution. What we want to do is to develop a more highly engaged, but much smaller community of meme warriors. People who are really fixated and really interested in this discourse level stuff, getting ideas out there, really, being in the debates out there, on the message boards, on the comment boards, on things, writing their blogs, writing for papers, and producing materials, whether it's videos or songs or whatever it is. We just need to kind of build up the chorus of the community of people who are prepared to roll up their sleeves and get involved.
So there you have it. Join the fight to shift paradigms at therules.org, and I highly, highly recommend watching their videos. All registered as Creative Commons, so you can spread that shit like dandelion seeds.